All right, so in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to migrate or convert your Caldera forms over to Gravity Forms. Okay, this does require a third-party plugin from Gravity View called Gravity Forms Import Entries. By default, Gravity Forms does not have the ability to import entries or to convert third-party page builders over to Gravity Forms. So this plugin is essential. There's a link to the plugin in the comments below. There's also a link to a complete tutorial over on the blog, gravityranger.com, where we walk through this entire process, providing you direction on the plugin that you need, where to find it, and all the details and step-by-step instruction on how to go about this process. This video is me just showing you quickly how this works and how simple the process is. Okay, so we've gone ahead and we've already exported the entries for the forms in Caldera. So we have Caldera form entries exported into a CSV file, and now we're ready to import those and create a form in Gravity Forms with those entries. So basically what that means is we're going to create a form in Gravity Forms, and then all the entries from the Caldera form are going to be mapped to the fields in the Gravity Forms and imported into Gravity Forms. So I'll have basically the same form that I was using in Caldera set up in Gravity Forms with all the entries now imported into Gravity Forms. So I'm not losing my data. I have all that information and I can just keep rolling pretty quickly. All right, so we're going to go to Gravity Forms tools here, or sorry, the Gravity Forms menu here, and then we're going to go to Import Export, and then we're going to do Import Entries. Now, if you haven't added that third-party plugin from Gravity View I mentioned, you're not going to see Import Entries because that's not a default feature of Gravity Forms Core. But what I'll be showing you here is the rest of the steps. So we're going to click on Import Entries. Now it asks us to drag a file or click anywhere to upload the file. So what we're looking for is that the CSV file that we exported from Caldera, which I have right here from my test form. Okay, so now it's going to ask us what do we want to do. Do we want to add these entries to an existing form, or do we want to create a new form? So maybe you've already gone ahead and you've already created your forms in Gravity Forms. So if you've done that, that's perfectly fine. You can select add it to an existing form. It's going to show you all the forms that you have created in Gravity Forms. You can select the form you want to use and then begin mapping your entries to the fields in that form. However, if you have not created your form yet in Gravity Forms, that's totally fine. This plugin will do that for you. And that's what I'm going to show you here, because I think this is the easiest process. Instead of creating the form and then importing the entries to that specific form, this does it all in one step. So we're going to create a new form. We're going to give that form a name. And then we're going to click continue here. So what that's going to do now is show us these are our entries. This is the data from the CSV file here. This is the field label that data had, or those entries had, in the Caldera form. So in the Caldera forms, the name field was first name. That was the label of the field. Last name was last name. Email address was email address. Okay, and then this field type here is how the plugin, or what the plugin thinks is the ideal form for this data set. Okay, so in this case, this is a date and time stamp. This is essentially the submission timestamp. So when this entry was created, date and timestamp. So I don't want to use a time field because that's not going to work. But what I do want to do is in entry properties, select entry date. That's now going to make this the date and time that these entries were submitted. You don't necessarily have to import that data. It's more of a CYA thing if you want to have the date and time stamp of when these entries were originally created. So if you didn't want to import this data, you would basically just click this X right here and shifts to do not import. Okay, and if you change your mind, you decide you do want to import it, you just go back and select the field type that you want to import that to. So first name here. So it assigned it to single line text, but that's not what I want. I want to actually use the name field. So I'm going to select the name field, and it says which field within the name field. If you're familiar with Gravity Forms, you know Gravity Forms has multiple fields within the name field. So I'm going to map this to the first name field. Now the last name field, same thing, say single line text. The tricky thing here is if you just select, where's name field? If you were to select name field again and then select last name, what this is going to do is it's going to actually create two name fields. The first name will be mapped to the first name field in one name field, and then you'll have another name field where the last name will be mapped to the last name field of that name field. Kind of confusing, but ideally what we want to do is you'll see that you have two name fields that have been set up now. So we don't want this one. This is the one that we created over here when we set up the first name. So we want to assign this to the last name field. Okay, so now you'll see that we have a name field, and the first name field is mapped over here to this column, and now the last name field is mapped to this column. So now that'll create one name field and map it to the appropriate fields within that field. Okay, so if you're not familiar with Gravity Forms, you will understand that once you see your form and how the name field is configured or set up. So now we have email address. Again, it was assigned to a single line text we don't want, so we'll just find the email field and map it to that. And then comments and questions. So again, single line text, but we need a paragraph for this one. Paragraph text. There we go. So now I've got my entries and my columns all mapped and configured to the appropriate Gravity Forms field type. When I hit continue with import, we're going to be asked a couple more questions. Okay, so configure import options. So continue processing if errors occur. This is automatically enabled for a purpose. I highly recommend that you leave it enabled. If you have a large CSV file, maybe let's just say 100 entries that you're importing, and if that import hit one issue with your with one row on that CSV file, then if there was an error, maybe maybe one of those rows is missing an email field, and so it's confused and doesn't know what to do, so it's just gonna error out. So instead of that happening, this will just continue to go past the error. So if you had 100 rows on your CSV file and one of them has an issue, instead of it erroring and you having to go through the whole process again, it will just pass that error and keep processing the data. Okay, so I recommend you that enabled. Conditional imports. This one is only necessary if let's say you have, for example, let's say an email field is absolutely necessary for this to work, and you don't want to import any entries or any rows that do not have an email field. So basically your conditionals would be set up like this. So import this row if all the following match. Email address is not empty. So if this import process hits an email, finds an entry that the email field is empty, it will skip that entry and will not import it. Okay, but I don't need any conditionals in this case. This one is email notifications. So basically, this will send an email notification for every entry that's imported or for every imported record. So again, if you've got 100 rows in your CSV file, you probably don't want to receive 100 notification emails as each one is imported. So it's totally up to you. Maybe you do. Maybe that's how you want to confirm that everything was imported. That seems a bit annoying to have to go through and delete 100 emails. So I typically leave that one off. So once you've made your selections there, basically when you click create form and continue with import, it's going to finish the process. It's going to set up the form in Gravity Forms, and then it's going to import the data and map it to those fields. Okay, pretty quick for my 2 records. Again, if you're dealing with a larger CSV file, it's going to take a little bit longer. Now, if you're doing multiple forms, you're going to have to do this for each form that you want to migrate from Caldera to Gravity Forms. So in this case, you could just jump right over to the next one and continue the process, or view imported records. I'm going to jump over here and view my imported records just to make sure everything worked fine. So you can see my 2 records are here. I have one name field with the first name and last name fields. Okay, all my data imported. Now I can go check the form here. Okay, and I'm going to point out that I noticed an issue that I'm going to report to Gravity View. This could be my install. This may not happen for everybody. But as you'll see here, this email field is small. And if we preview it, the email field is tiny. And that's because basically when it sets this up, it sets the field size here to small. But you'll notice that it's blank. And that's usually indicates some kind of a conflict or issue. So basically you should see the option that you select here in this field. But because you can't, that's an issue, probably with the plugin or with the process. So I want that to be a large field. So I'm going to select large and then save the form, and that should reset it. So now you'll see my form size or my field size is large. And if I go preview it again, there we go. My email field size is large. So if you notice that, just a quick tip, if you notice that if your fields don't look right, you'll just want to go and adjust the settings and then save the form, and it should correct it. Okay. Now, one other thing we're going to point out here is the submit button. So this is also another issue. Again, this could just be my test site here, but I haven't seen it happen any other way in the times that I've used this. So if your submit button looks like this is not a proper Gravity Forms submit button. So that again is potentially another conflict or an issue with the import process or the setup process. And that's because, and I'll show you here, we're going to go to form settings. Potentially because, I'm not 100% sure, there's no button text created. Now if I just save the settings and we go back to preview, it might correct it. Yep. So now the proper button shows. Okay. Typically when Gravity Forms creates a form, when you do it directly through the form builder, this is going to have the text in the field there. This does not create text. So again, I don't know if that's an issue with the plugin or with my install, but just coming into form settings and saving them corrects the issue. You can also go ahead and put your button text in and then save the settings, and again it should work. So now that the form will work properly, we can go ahead and test it. Submit, and we have a proper submission confirmation. We can go check the entries. And here's my new entry right here with all my proper data. All right, so that's how you will convert your Caldera Forms from the Caldera Form Builder and all the data associated with those forms over to Gravity Forms by using one plugin. A pretty simple process, works really well. Now, if you're a Caldera user and you've already migrated to Ninja Forms, which is the company that acquired Caldera, and they've already set up a process for migrating your forms over to Ninja Forms and have given you a great offer. If you're a paid Caldera user or if you're a free Caldera user and you're migrating over, they've set up a great offer to help with retention. But if you've already made that conversion over to Ninja Forms, that's totally fine. This same process will work with any form that you have set up in Ninja Forms. Okay, so I also have a tutorial or a link to another tutorial in the description below this video, where you can go and learn how to do that with Ninja Forms as well. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to use the comments. Again, there's a link below this video in the description that will take you to a step-by-step tutorial on our blog, gravityranger.com, where we have a visual step-by-step of how to do this. So anyway, again, any questions, feel free, use the comments, and be happy to help where I can. Take care.